Coming up on 5 Minute News. Republican plan to dismantle federal government in 2024. Biden announces 10 drugs picked for Medicare price negotiation. And UN says fighting in Ethiopia kills at least 183 people. It's Wednesday, August 30. I'm Anthony Davis. With more than a year to go before the 2024 election, a constellation of Republican organizations are preparing for a possible second White House term for Donald Trump, recruiting thousands of Americans to come to Washington on a mission to dismantle the federal government and replace it with a vision closer to his own. Led by the long-established Heritage Foundation think tank and fueled by former Trump administration officials, the far-reaching effort is essentially a government in waiting for the former president's return, or any candidate who aligns with their ideals and can defeat President Joe Biden next year. With nearly a 1,000-page Project 2025 handbook, the idea is to have the civic infrastructure in place on day one to commandeer, reshape, and do away with what Republicans deride as the deep state bureaucracy, in part by firing as many as 50,000 federal workers. "We need to flood the zone with conservatives," said Paul Dans, director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project and a former Trump administration official who speaks with historical flourish about the undertaking. Trump-era MAGA Republicans want to gut the administrative state from within by ousting federal employees they believe are standing in the way of the president's agenda and replacing them with like-minded officials more eager to fulfill a new executive's approach to governing. The goal is to avoid the pitfalls of Trump's first years in office, when the Republican president's team was ill-prepared, his cabinet nominees had trouble winning Senate confirmation, and far-right and extremist policies were met with resistance by lawmakers, government workers, and even Trump's own appointees, who refused to bend or break protocol, or in some cases violate laws, to achieve his goals. While many of the Project 2025 proposals are inspired by Trump, they are being echoed by GOP rivals Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy and are gaining prominence among other Republicans. While presidents typically rely on Congress to put policies into place, the Heritage Project leans into what legal scholars refer to as a unitary view of executive power, or fascism, that suggests the president has broad authority to act alone. The Biden administration on Tuesday released its list of 10 prescription medications that will be subject to the first-ever price negotiations by the U.S. Medicare health program that covers 66 million Americans, with big-selling blood thinner Eliquis from Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer among them. President Joe Biden's signature Inflation Reduction Act, signed into law last year, allows Medicare to negotiate prices for some of its most profitable drugs. "Today is the start of a new deal for patients," Biden said at a White House event, adding that Americans often pay 2 to 3 times more than other countries for the same drugs. Once implemented, the prices on negotiated drugs will decrease for up to 9 million seniors who currently pay as much as $6,497 in out-of-pocket costs per year for these prescriptions, Biden said. Medicare, which mostly serves Americans aged 65 and over, pays twice as much for drugs than the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, which already negotiates drug prices, he said. Tuesday's announcement kicks off the negotiation process for the 10 drugs whose new prices will go into effect in 2026. The program aims to save $25 billion a year on drug prices by 2031. The 10 initial drugs were chosen based on certain criteria set out by Medicare. They must be sold in pharmacies, not have substantial generic competition, and have been on the market for at least 9 years. 13 for more complex biotech drugs. Fighting between Ethiopia's military and militiamen in the Amhara region has killed at least 183 people, the UN Human Rights Office said on Tuesday, providing the most comprehensive independent death toll to date of the month-long conflict. More than 1,000 people have been arrested nationwide, many of them reported to be young people of ethnic Amhara origin. Under a state of emergency, the government decreed to respond to the violence, the UN added in a statement. The conflict has been fueled by accusations among many in Amhara, Ethiopia's second most populous region, that the government is trying to undermine its security. The government denies the accusation. Government forces reclaimed major towns and cities across the region earlier this month, after initially being chased out by the militiamen. But the conflict has ground on, with federal forces reasserting their presence in certain towns and Fano militias reportedly retreating into rural areas. We call on all actors to stop killings, other violations and abuses, the UN statement said. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.